Well, welcome to the webinar officially. I'm Jason Jones, Managing Principal and Service Line Leader of Cresa's Hybrid Workforce Services. And I'm joined today by Steve Ike, Senior Vice President at Cresa. Welcome to the webinar. There is a workforce trend that's happening right now that's both frightening and exciting. Frightening because this trend causes real disruption in any organization, but exciting because of its implications for the health of the broader economy and because of the possibilities for organizations who go on the offensive to capitalize on this trend. So I'm going to let the headlines in the news do the talking. That frightening and exciting trend is, as this headline from a recent Forbes article describes, workers are quitting their jobs in record numbers as the U.S. experiences a booming job market. More headlines. In the Wall Street Journal, forget going back to the office. People are just quitting instead. And Bloomberg Wealth, employees are quitting instead of giving up working from home. Again, from Forbes. Companies who focus on their workers will win the war for talent when offices reopen. And finally, from the New York Times, how do they say economic recovery? I quit. Quoting from the article, with new opportunities and a different perspective as the pandemic eases, workers are choosing to leave their jobs in record numbers. And here's the proof. A chart from the U.S. Labor Department. This shows the number of U.S. workers leaving jobs as a share of total employment. And this ratio is called the quits rate. And quits are generally voluntary separations initiated by the employee. Therefore, the quits rate can serve as a measure of workers' willingness or ability to leave jobs, and by association, their confidence in the availability of another job. A few key numbers just for context. The nadir, the bottom point on this graph, is September 2009. Just coming out of the Great Recession. Hardly anyone was voluntarily leaving their job, and the quits rate was 1.2%. Then, as you can see, the economy began to improve, and the number of people leaving voluntarily, quitting, began to increase. But then the pandemic hit, and shelter in place and work from home mandates went into place, and the quits rate plummeted to 1.5% in April of 2020. However, 1 year later, coming out of the pandemic, the rate of employees voluntarily leaving their jobs has skyrocketed to a whopping 80% to 2.7%, the highest level since at least 2000. So, why are employees voluntarily choosing to leave their jobs? And what can be done about it? Well, the first why is the natural churn of people leaving their jobs was stymied during the pandemic. People hunkered down and sheltered in their jobs. But now, this pent-up churn has been uncorked. And the job market is accommodating this pent-up demand. In April of 2020, the number of new job openings reported by the U.S. Labor Department was 9.3 million. 9.3 million new job openings, the highest since at least 2000. And fueling the desire to seek employment elsewhere is the existential effect the pandemic had on the psyche of the workforce. Faced with working from home to avoid a potentially deadly virus caused many to re-examine their lives and their work experience. People are wondering if they really want to continue in the same career, or should they try something new? Many learn new skills and seek a new challenge. And finally, some workers are unhappy with their organization's return to work policy as it regards a flexible remote working environment. Insurance giant Prudential conducted a recent national survey that found 1 in 3 American workers would not want to work for an employer that required them to be on site full time. So, what to do? What are organizations doing to recruit and retain talent in the midst of this war for talent? Well, some are offering raises and bonuses. Some are extending perks, such as offering free Pelotons and Apple products. Others are taking the time to design engaging office environments. Google is a good example. They're building and repurposing office spaces to make them inviting, using ideas like team pods that have highly mobile furniture, which can be easily wheeled into various arrangements, making the workspace designed as the employee desires it, giving them freedom of choice. They're also building cool outdoor hangouts with teepees for team meetings. They're trying to make the office place a place where you want to go and are willing to do the commute. And finally, many forward-thinking companies are planning flexible, hybrid workforce strategies that leverage both what they learned about remote work over the past year and combine that with the time-proven benefits of a shared office. Ford Motor Company is a great example. Ford has announced a progressive hybrid work model for 30,000 of its office-based employees who can, quote, continue to work from home indefinitely and have flexible hours approved by their managers. And that's coming from a 100-year-old manufacturer in the staid auto industry. And they're going to couple this policy with a radical redesign of their physical workplace. They're planning versatile and adaptable environments which they expect will evolve over time and recalibrate as time goes on. This is very smart and very forward-thinking. And I think this quote by Kirsten Robinson of Ford is both insightful and humble. She says, if there's one thing that we've learned of the last 12 months, it is that a lot of our assumptions around work and what employees need has shifted. But what about you all? What assumptions do you have related to your own organization's hybrid workforce? We thought it'd be interesting to poll all of you in the audience on just a few questions related to remote working and retention of talent. So I'm going to launch the poll and see what it is that you all think and what assumptions you have about your workplace. So go ahead and answer these as I read them aloud. But the first question is, after the pandemic, how often will your employees work remotely compared to before the pandemic? So this is sort of like comparing 2019 with 2021, let's say, or even 2022. And secondly, after the pandemic, do you personally want to work remotely more than you did before? Finally, after the pandemic, do you feel that part-time work from home will be important for your organization to recruit and retain talent? So I'll give it just a moment as we wait for everyone to cast their ballots, and then we'll move on with the webinar. Okay, it looks like we have got the majority of folks that have entered their picks, so I'm going to go ahead and end the polling and share this with you all. So here we can see question number one. How often will your employees work remotely compared to before the pandemic? More, 100%. Second, interestingly, it's also 100% for do you personally want to work remotely more often? Not 100%, but more often than before. And then third, we've got an overwhelming majority, 75%, saying after the pandemic that part-time work from home is going to be important for your organization. So let me stop sharing results and move on to the next. So these results really mirror what we have seen in multiple surveys over the past year. And the obvious question is, well, what should the balance be for my organization between remote or office? And in other words, what's the right hybrid blend? And when asking this question, it's important to remember that the new reality is, according to multiple surveys, at least 70% of all office-based workers want a part-time combination of working from home and the office. And the remaining 30% are split basically evenly between wanting full-time remote and full-time office, which means if you only offer one or the other, you'll limit yourself to attracting only 15% of the workforce. 85% of the workforce will look elsewhere, and perhaps that includes your portions of your own workforce. So what is the right blend for your organization? What are the criteria for a successful strategy to make sure you're not missing anything? And what are the unintended consequences? And how do you build a consensus for a policy that you'll be able to support with human resources, technology, operations, and financially? To answer these questions, you need a plan. You need a plan to balance remote and the office. But any plan is going to be unique to every organization and likely unique to each department within an organization. It could be that some departments will need to be in the office every day, or other departments or specific job roles may only need to be in 3 times a month. And it's because of this disparity in job roles, cultures, and differing opinions that many leaders feel stuck and the organization is paralyzed. It's hard to find consensus on a way forward. So if you're contemplating a hybrid work arrangement and you're interested in answering questions such as, well, what questions should we be asking? And is there a framework to evaluate a hybrid workforce strategy? And what is the roadmap to navigate to the right blend of remote and office? Then this webinar is for you. As mentioned, I'm Jason Jones. I'm joined today by Steve Ike. I've been at Cresa for 18 years, originally as a real estate advisor, but now exclusively leading 2 of our service lines, Cresa Business Technology Sourcing and Hybrid Workforce Services. Steve has over 25 years of experience providing workforce strategy expertise to companies like General Electric, Macy's, Procter & Gamble, and Kimberly-Clark, to name a few. Today, we'll have a 50-minute presentation with some Q&A at the end. We'll record the webinar, as I mentioned, send a copy out afterwards. And please, along the way, make use of the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. You can hover over that and enter in not only questions that you may have at any time throughout the webinar, but also just comments. There may be something that you see that spurs an idea that you'd like to share, and we'd like to share it with others. We'd like to hear from you. So today, we're going to address, number 1, the context for where we are in the timeline of the COVID-19 experience from a work perspective. Also, the benefits and challenges of a hybrid workforce strategy, its key elements, and a roadmap to build a sustainable strategy. So we start with the context for where we are in the timeline of the pandemic. Phase 1 was the immediate phase. People were forced to vacate their offices and work from home. Phase 2 is the endure phase. We've been enduring, leveraging technology, modifying workflows, and working to maintain our culture. Phase 3 will be the sustain and compete phase. This is the post-COVID phase, downstream. Organizations will work to sustain a new way of working that leverages what they learned about remote work while recapturing all of the benefits of a shared central office. But to get from phase 2 to phase 3, we have to go through a transition. And that is where we are right now. Or should I say, that's where we should be right now. Forward-thinking leaders are there, taking advantage of this time to invest and prepare for the future. But before leaders can move forward with a specific transition plan, they have to ask a key question of the organization, a question that addresses the key workforce desire to continue working from home part-time. And this key question is one that we suggest you too ask yourself. And that question is, what is the right hybrid workforce strategy specific to us that will, first, be reflective of our culture and minimize expenses and the threat to business continuity while maximizing productivity, talent attraction and retention, and financial results? So it's these key business drivers that inform the planning process for a hybrid workforce strategy. And in order to evaluate different strategies, we start by understanding the benefits and the challenges. So let's take a look. The benefits of a hybrid workforce strategy combine the best of remote work and the best of the shared office. At the top of the list for remote working is the reduced commute and fewer interruptions. These, of course, increase productivity. Other potential benefits are the reduced expense of real estate employee turnover, absenteeism, and the personal costs of reduced commute, clothes, and food. There are environmental benefits, and employees consistently state their work-life balance is better. Now, on the other hand, the benefits of the office are time-proven and have really crystallized during the pandemic. Highlights on the screen include things that typically occur best in person, such as mentoring and serendipitous moments. Now, one benefit of both remote work and the shared office is the ability to recruit and retain talent. Remember, with 70% of employees wanting a hybrid workforce experience, both office and remote combined, organizations will have to offer some degree of flexibility between home and office to recruit and retain the best and the brightest. However, even with all the benefits of a hybrid workforce environment, there are several challenges to plan for. Now, separately, the challenges of remote work in the shared office have been experienced by us all, but what has not yet been experienced on a broad scale are the challenges associated with the hybrid workforce model. So we're going to highlight 3 challenging scenarios that organizations could be faced with in a post-COVID hybrid workforce environment. And the first challenge is the potential for disparity between teams. Let's take Team A. Team A has a manager who embraces a hybrid workforce. She's on board with the concept of giving you freedom to choose where and when you feel you can be most productive. Periodically, she requires in-person meetings, but they're purposeful and well-run. She focuses on the output of your efforts, not the input of your time. Team members feel a strong spirit of freedom working for her. Then there's Team B. Team B has a manager who doubts the long-term effectiveness of a hybrid workforce. He's uncomfortable managing people he can't see and requires in-office presence, although he does allow remote work 1 day of the week. When Team B looks at Team A, they feel constrained. So what's the outcome? Team B feels jealous and dispirited. They wonder, can I switch teams? Or worse, should I leave my job? Now, another potential challenge is the internal division within a hybrid team. In this scenario, we have in-office team members who are either full-time in the office or majority in office, and then we have remote team members who are either full-time remote or majority remote. Now, if the boss spends most of her time in the office, then the in-office team members have proximity to her, the remote members do not. This proximity may lead to real or perceived better career opportunities, choice assignments, promotions, etc., and better access to information. What's the upshot of this scenario? Remote team members feel undervalued and dispirited. Teamwork is reduced. And they may wonder, can I switch teams? Or worse, should I leave this organization? If you're the VP overseeing this team, what do you do? How do you prevent the scenario? And yet another challenge of a hybrid workforce regards how to accommodate multiple employee profiles. And by profiles, we mean how and when an employee chooses to work. For example, profile number 1 are employees who choose to work 3 days in the office and 2 days at home, or perhaps 2 days in the office and 3 days at home. Profile number 2 are in the office 100% of the time, but there's a cultural acceptance that if they take an afternoon or a day to work remotely, no big deal. Everyone feels comfortable, but that they're not playing hooky, they're actually working. And profile number 3's default location is at home, but they attend periodic in-person team meetings and occasionally choose to drop in the office to work or socialize. The challenge is, how do you accommodate all of these profiles? What are the critical requirements to support them? Now, this next slide is really key to the awareness of what it takes to support a hybrid workforce. What should organizations do from the perspective of human resource policy, measuring performance, ongoing training, cultural norms, technology, cybersecurity, and developing a real estate strategy that will support each of these profiles all at the same time? Should you even allow all of these profiles? Is it any wonder why many organizations feel paralyzed on this topic right now? Which brings us to another poll. And the first question is, what are the most pressing challenge, what is the most pressing challenge for your organization of a hybrid workforce? So I'm going to launch the poll. And again, respond at your own pace while I read through the list. Okay, so again, what is the most pressing challenge for your organization of a hybrid workforce? And we understand it's probably more than one. But just if you had to select one, which one would that be? Fairness for evaluations and promotions, as we discussed in one of the earlier examples of a challenge. The morale and culture of the organization. Perhaps it's your human resource policies that you have yet to figure out and are concerned about. Redesigning office space is going to be an issue for many companies. Unexpected costs, cybersecurity, collaboration, and mentoring. So those are the challenges that we see most often our clients and other companies we talk to talking about. And then the second question is, has your organization determined its future workforce strategy yet? And it's either nope, we haven't made any decisions and have not started official planning, or we haven't made any decisions, but we have started planning, or we've decided and we need to create or implement our plan. And then finally, what kind of workforce strategy will your organization employ? And we've got the spectrum represented here, all the way from fully remote to a full office strategy. And we also put one in here about, you know what, there's no one size fits all strategy. It's really going to depend on the job roles, the leaders and employee preference, et cetera, as they make that decision. And then, of course, finally, not sure yet, as there are many who are not sure yet. So we'll give this just a minute or two for folks to chime in and or weigh in on their vote. Okay, it looks like we've got a good number in. So I'm going to go ahead and end the polling, and we will move on to the next one. Here, I'll share results. And as you can see, for the most challenging or the most pressing challenge, if you had to pick just one, morale and culture of the organization got 67%, and collaboration got another 33%. And I have to say, that's pretty common that those two are among the top two. Morale and culture is certainly critical. And then, has your organization determined its future workforce strategy? 2/3 have said, yep, and we just need to implement. And one is you've started planning. And then third, what kind of strategy? Looks like it's a third for remote first, a third that are equal, and 1/3 not quite sure yet. Let me stop sharing results. And you know, what I would say is it's always so interesting to us to see what the top concerns are, really hearing it from the field, so to speak. But I have to say, rarely, if ever, does redesigning office space rank at the top of the list. But many of our friendly competitors in the real estate industry tend to focus on office space as the primary solution to hybrid workforce problems. But clearly, there are so many more challenges and solutions that affect the success of your organization. And this is why Cresa's motto is to think beyond space. We start our process by understanding upstream workforce challenges and then create workforce strategies that are supported by human resources, technology, and downstream real estate solutions. Now, to address the hybrid workforce challenges and create a successful strategy, you need a framework for developing the strategy. And the framework that we have developed is called Workplace 2.0, because it not only addresses the physical space, but also the other non-space elements that drive a successful strategy. And the first element is talent. A successful workforce strategy must attract and retain the best and the brightest. The strategy should also foster an organization's culture and leverage technology to drive productivity. And finally, there's the physical space itself. And what's exciting and new about Workplace 2.0 is the concept of space being not only about the design and location of a physical office, but also offering employees the freedom to choose the best location. And it's this combination of a well-located, well-designed office space along with the freedom to choose that together drive employee engagement, productivity, and satisfaction. You see, Workplace 2.0 will be different for each organization, each department, even each team and individual. But the good news is that you can use the key elements of this paradigm to navigate to the right hybrid workforce strategy for your organization. So let's take them one at a time. The first is talent. You have to determine which job roles are appropriate for remote work and which job functions might be modified to facilitate virtual processes and virtual collaboration. Next, you have to determine who is the personal aptitude for remote work. Not everyone who's in a job suitable for remote work is also a good personal fit for remote work. Personal assessments can help, especially when coupled with training, which leads to training for managers and employees. Managers may benefit from training to better manage a team that at any given time includes some people at home and some people at work at the same time. In addition, the technology that enables remote work is constantly changing. And many employees, they just simply don't know how to use the full suite of the technology that they already have. So training them on it can really help. And finally, eligibility requirements set expectations and provide structure. Companies can use key performance indicators and performance evaluations to establish and maintain eligibility. Culture is the second key element, with trust being the first key component. Organizations must build trust both up and down the chain of command. Most important is to be consistent and follow through. People are trusted when they consistently demonstrate that they do what they say they're going to do. Now, communication. Good communication, both formal and informal, is critical to keep employees motivated and informed. And in hybrid environments, communication needs to be high quality and high frequency. Cultural norms. So part of any culture is establishing group norms, whether spoken or unspoken. And a best practice is for teams to discuss and agree upon a short list of norms that guide team behavior and build comfort with the hybrid model. So examples would include setting certain days of the week as no camera days, or setting a default time frame for meetings that's short, 15 minutes. That's our standard. Commit to not using the chat feature during video meetings to avoid distractions, and commit to turning on everyone's individual camera during in-person team meetings so that those folks who are not there present with the rest of the group feel like they're part of the group. And that speaks to value and job security. Because they're out of sight, employees who work remotely all or most of the time need to feel like valuable members of the team, who are secure in their jobs and not at a disadvantage with coworkers who spend more time in the office. And finally, socialization. Efforts to maintain relational bonds are even more important in a hybrid environment. We've all come to learn that. And on the left, just a few ideas to build and maintain relationships among hybrid team members that can be done remotely. Now, for the technology element, I want to introduce my colleague, Steve Ike. As I mentioned earlier, Steve has over 25 years of experience providing workforce strategy consulting to several large, successful global businesses. Steve, I turn it over to you.
And Jason, thank you for that. As we look, I'll start with the concept that technology is more than platforms and more than tools. It's really a resource enabler that can be leveraged to create that on-demand work experience and build connections between team members. As we look at how, when, where, and how often people work, whether remote or in the office, communication and collaboration platforms are that foundation for the purposeful interaction. And through real-time communications and near real-time communications, excuse me, they can be combined with that unified communications application for that anytime, anyone, anywhere, one number reach across any device, from mobile phones to tablets to laptops, to be able to create that shared work environment and shared workplace to meet, collaborate, and share ideas. And secondly, performance management addresses that and focuses on managing productivity versus activity. And it considers those areas that Jason mentioned, building trust, empowering employees, and driving productivities. And it helps those managers that used to manage by, if I can't see, I can't manage, to now, hey, if I can measure, I can manage. So performance management is both a process and a set of tools that organizations use to measure and evaluate corporate performance and employee performance. And through that, it helps managers have those meaningful conversations with their employees and get that real-time access to information in a visual dashboard. And it comes to really focus on that issue faced with the in-office and remote tension, providing that consistency of measurable productivity, measurable progress, attainment of goals, and driving business outcomes. The document management, you think of the online storage that we use with Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, and others. It is a library combined with management tools that can be utilized to manage content, address the security of that document, the owner of the document, the version of that, and then the distribution of those documents and files. So think about it this way: if we can facilitate real-time and anywhere access into these, combined with process and workflows, document management can be used in loan processes for financial services, claims management for insurance companies, and even client matter and case files for law firms, of managing the workflow and the documents as they go across the organization. And finally, as we look at cybersecurity and compliance, to me, this is often the most overlooked and underanalyzed area for remote work. With more people at home, with more connected devices, this provides a chance, as we've seen, for folks to gain access to critical and secure information, or even insert tools to come in that can create havoc inside of an organization. So we think about technical considerations like the wireless networks and separating your wireless connectivity from the other devices in the home. Secure connectivity, whether it be through VPN or trusted connections, and then intrusion detection. But the human factors, human errors, and threats from within, both intentional and accidental, are the ones that really can drive an impact on secure information. There's physical as well. I have, because of space, I've got a locked door, a secure laptop, and I can manage those no eyes to hear and, no eyes to see and ears to hear, and what the employees are working on. So think about, and we'll talk about it later, but you now have more devices and more people in the home can hear. So what we want to do is keep our work separate from our personal activities, and then provide training and policies for employee responsibility, security, and addressing those activities that can impact corporate security. So Jason, thanks for giving me just a second to tee up technology and how that can help remote work.
Thank you very much, Steve. So moving on to the final element is the physical space itself. Now, to accommodate employees' desire for freedom of choice in when and where they work, organizations must view the workplace as a network of flexible, convenient, and on-demand places. Employees want the option to choose a workplace location where they feel that they will be most productive for that day, or even just part of the day, which means freedom of movement will be important, whether between workplaces or even inside of the shared office workplace. But at the same time, in order to really make this effective, leaders must be purposeful about their frequency and the medium of collaboration. Team leaders must be intentional about when to use the office versus when to use digital tools for meetings and collaboration. No one ever liked wasting their time in a meeting before the pandemic, and now they are certainly more sensitive to it. You don't want them wondering, Why did I make the commute and come all the way into the office for this meeting? Leaders will need to model the behavior of being organized and prepared and thoughtful about how to make the best use of everyone's time and build a culture of purposeful collaboration. So that's the 4 key elements, but we have a bonus key element, and that is policy. We felt that a clear corporate policy is so important that we included it as the 5th element. A clear policy is crucial to setting expectations. And as a leader, if you don't set expectations, your employees will set their own, and they will likely be different from yours. Hybrid workforce policies should address eligibility requirements, tools and resources the company will provide for home use, what the employee is expected to provide, expectations for personal performance and participation, whether staying at home, working home, or when they come into the office and what they're doing when they're in the office, and what constitutes disqualification. So now that you've learned about the key elements of Workplace 2.0, you may be asking, okay, but what's the process for getting there? Where's the best place to start? So we want to introduce you to a second key framework for developing a hybrid workforce strategy, which leads to downstream workplace design and real estate strategy. And the concept is be sequential to be successful. And it all starts at the top. We believe the 2 most important elements of success are leadership and culture. They're the umbrella which overhangs all success. Then the fundamental business goals of operational productivity, recruiting and retaining talent, and maximizing financial results inform all decisions and drive behavior. Now, to support these business goals, you must follow a sequential path, starting with workforce strategy, followed by workplace strategy and design, and then real estate strategy. Too often, companies skip the human component of workforce strategy and go straight to step 2 or step 3. So here it is again. Step 1 drives step 2, which leads naturally to step 3. Be sequential to be successful. And when workforce strategy is addressed in this manner, first, it gives you the freedom to design your workplace with the confidence that you're basing the design and the real estate strategy on meaningful information, but also that your real estate strategy won't have to adapt to a changing workforce strategy at some point down the road. You see, you want to build the workplace design and real estate strategy on solid rock, not shifting sand. So, knowing this, it's important to begin by examining what we call the critical requirements of a hybrid workforce strategy, being mindful that you'll now be supporting workers who are at home one day and the office another day. And we believe this is a key differentiator for Cresa. We don't know of anyone else who starts their real estate strategy by evaluating the critical requirements of an upstream workforce strategy. So here's the checklist that every organization should work through, and we'll send an email with this list to all attendees of the webinar, so no need to jot down every point right now. But if you'd like to have a conversation about your specific situation, please contact Steve or myself or the Cresa advisor who invited you to this webinar. We enjoy those open dialogues and sharing what we're seeing other organizations doing. So the final question, one from early on in the webinar, which is, how do we make that transition? How should we evaluate all of those critical requirements to develop a successful and sustainable hybrid workforce strategy? And Cresa has developed a roadmap that consists of 5 steps to methodically walk you through that process. And it begins with awareness. Learn best practices. Understand the benefits and challenges. Become aware of the process. You're taking a step towards doing that today by being here on the webinar. The next 3 steps, Cresa has combined into a workshop that's built on 3 phases. Phase 1 is discovery. That begins with a kickoff meeting where you build your team and establish goals, and then we conduct surveys and interviews to evaluate your organization in light of the critical requirements. Phase 2 is analysis. Here we identify any gaps that we discovered in the critical requirements that we evaluated during discovery. and we determine solutions to meet your goals. Phase 3 is delivery of an executive summary with recommendations to fill capability gaps, application of best practices to your specific situation, and advice on your remote work policy. The workshop takes about 4 weeks, and one of its major benefits, and I can't stress this enough, is it provides a structured, methodical process for leadership teams to have conversations about their future workforce strategy and build consensus on the pathway forward. And when you're able to build consensus and have confidence in the work that you've done to prepare that plan, you now are enabled to deliver clear communication and consistent communication to your employees. And trust me, they're wondering in their heads, what is our long-term policy? How is this going to affect me, where I live, where I work, how I work, etc. So by doing all this, another follow-on benefit is you have the freedom to move forward in confidence that you're designing that workplace design and the real estate strategy on solid rock, not shifting sand. So the fifth and final step of the roadmap is really implementation of the plan. And for this, we offer a more robust blueprint plan, which includes everything from the workshop, but a deeper dive into discovery and analysis with follow-on monitoring and feedback over a 60, 90, and 120-day period. So with that, let me offer a summary. First, the desire for freedom of where and when employees work is changing. And as important as a shared central office is, this desire for freedom of choice requires that most organizations develop a hybrid workforce strategy unique to them, their culture, and their business needs. And to get there, transition is key. Just over the horizon is an open door for all of your employees to return to the office. And some have even crossed that threshold and done this full return to office. But how you make that transition over the next 3 to 6 to 12 months is really going to determine how successful and how competitive you're going to be, and I believe how competitive you'll be to recruit and retain talent. And then finally, be sequential to be successful. Remember, it only makes sense to develop your workspace design and real estate strategy after you've evaluated the human component of your workforce strategy and all the critical requirements that make it successful. Give yourself meaningful information to inform your decision-making and build your strategies on solid rock, not shifting sand. Now, there's one last thought that we want to leave you with. I was in the Navy for 8 years, flying jets off of aircraft carriers. So I know that the Navy is an organization that runs on planning, training, and leadership, especially leadership. Similarly, implementing corporate programs, especially those that involve significant change, requires the same 3 elements. This is a time of dramatic change that requires leadership to find the right hybrid workforce strategy that supports your people and makes you more competitive. So, be thoughtful in your planning, train your people, and take the initiative to lead them well. So, thank you for the opportunity to deliver this webinar to you all. Excuse me. We're here at the end, and it looks like we've got 12 minutes left over for some Q&A. And I'm going to open up the Q&A feature so I can see what comments and questions have come in. Hold on just one moment. And let me stop sharing the screen. By the way, our email addresses are there on the screen. So if there's a particular slide that you liked, you had an interest in, again, please reach out to myself or Steve or the Cresa advisor who invited you, and we will get that to you. So, hold on one moment. Okay. It looks like, okay, first question in is, who is typically included in the workshop that you offer? So sort of just a practical question. And Steve, I'll let you jump in as well, but when we do these workshops, we really encourage that you have a senior team that represents key parts of the organization. And every organization is different, but a few of the people that we feel are really, really important for this type of work are, number one, human resources. So whoever is chief of your human resources is a very important person to include. We believe IT is a critical component because that's what enables a remote work environment, a hybrid environment. Typically finance is involved, and then it's a choice that organizations make about leaders of major divisions, or perhaps sometimes the CEO. We've had that multiple times, but again, you get the idea. It's just a cross-reference of multiple members of the C-suite team, and that is what we have found to be most successful. So, Steve, anything else that you would add to that?
I would say, and with that, operations, kind of understands the inner flow and inner working of an organization and the heartbeat of that. So it's great to have operations represented in those conversations as well.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so another question that comes in: what are some examples of tools that help measure time, productivity, and engagement of hybrid, hybrid employees? And how do companies use them?
So, great question. As we look at getting back to that tension of managers wanting to be able to see and watch and feel, the first with both time and productivity, data can be gathered from a wide variety of sources, and both Microsoft and Oracle and others, can provide the database repositories of the information. But you bring in a third part, and that's the engaged employee. And as we look at those areas, we want to be able to measure, analyze, and report on that. So surveys, both formal surveys and informal surveys, and in the one-on-ones, providing a pathway for the managers to keep their pulse on their team and see how things are going and provide that upward feedback to leadership. And with measuring that, you do have different tools. Microsoft's probably one of the largest that's out there that can be the data repository and data measurement. So you want to capture, connect, combine, and report on that. But then you want to link that in with your HRIS or HCM, Human Resources Information Systems and Human Capital Management, where you're looking at how do you provide a great tool for managers to have conversations with the employees. But there's another train of thought on this, Jason, is what if we have the ability to visualize that on my desktop, on my tablet, or even on my phone? So with many of the new performance management applications, they're built so that I can see how am I doing as an individual and how am I contributing to that. Because employee engagement is so critical, because you want to make sure that you've got connected employees, invested employees, that they feel like they're part of something bigger and that they're contributing. So being able to get that instant feedback, almost like a visual dashboard with red, green, yellow. How am I doing against the measurements that I can impact?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're an engaged employee.
I think that's so important, that point about an engaged employee. And, so Cresa comes from the corporate real estate advisory industry, and that's a big word inside of designing spaces and buildings, and owners of buildings are trying to advertise that they're helping you engage your employees. But it happens in management and leadership as well. And we have a slide that I used to use in the webinar that, things have changed over time. But, an engaged employee is an employee who is absent less often, who tends to stay at the organization as opposed to leave, which reduces churn. That's very expensive. But they also tend to do better with customer service, which leads to a lower customer churn rate, and it's very expensive to acquire new customers. And so when you have a lower churn rate, that leads to longer term customer value and therefore higher profits. So it all starts at the top with engaging your employees, and part of this is learning how to measure some of these human resource items and issues, and keep them engaged by listening to them, adapting to what some of their desires are around working remotely, but balancing that, of course, with the needs of the organization to have them in the office, depending on what types of needs you have for collaboration and culture.
Yeah, Jason, wouldn't it be neat if you could do a net promoter score for your employees to find out, are they attractors or detractors for that, and do they feel like they're part of something bigger?
Yes.
And with that, you're immediately addressing that employee satisfaction and turnover.
Yep. All right, so let me move on to another question, which is, and Steve, I think this is good for you. Do you have insights into the percentage of companies offering furniture and technology for the home office, and how much? Right?
Okay.
How much do you offer? There's no one answer here, but go ahead, Steve.
You're right. So first, you want to look at what are your state requirements. States like California actually require you to reimburse a remote employee for those monthly expenses.
Yes.
When you think about attracting and retaining talent, you want to step up. So I'll answer the first question. What percentage? Early on, it was as low as 10%, and it's growing now to 20 or 25% of companies that are realizing that, hey, we have to take care of our team members. So they're stepping up. So it's 20 or 25% now, and I see that growing. The second is how much. So let's look at two things. For a new employee or an employee that will be going home part-time or permanently, the stipend or reimbursement, depending on what your tax implications are, I see anywhere from 300 to 500. But Toby over at Shopify and Twitter, they were actually offering up to $1,000 per employee to help with that setup. And that's everything from good ergonomic chairs, a good desk, dual monitors, monitor stands, because we want that employee to be productive, and having the right tools is important. So 500 is probably the good median for that. And then on the monthly expenses for your internet and your cell phone, anywhere from 50 to 75 or even up to 100 with more progressive companies for the monthly reimbursement.
Got it.
And it pays back in spades. I mean, it really has a great payback on that.
Yep. Yep. And there are plans that there's furniture companies that do have platforms to help your employees easily order from a curated list of furniture that you have approved, and they can run the payments through them and do a reimbursement. So there's some resources that we have discovered over time that are very helpful to organizations who want to provide that benefit to their employees if they choose to do so.
And even Office Depot has it for, you can go down to your local place and pick up your monitor and monitor stands as well on an employee reimbursement program.
Yeah. So another question is, will you be sending a copy of the presentation? And the short answer there is, we do send a truncated version of this presentation. It's not every single slide, but if there's something that you would like, a specific slide that you saw or you had some questions, email us. You will receive an email from me, so you can just reply to that, and we can have a conversation about what it is that which portion you are interested in seeing a little bit more about. So I hope that helps, and you will certainly get a copy of the recording as well. So we've got 3 minutes, it looks like here, and let me see another. So here's a question, Steve. How do you do mentoring in a remote environment? Obviously, it's easy to understand mentoring the sort of the old school ways when you're seeing someone every day and you can manage or mentor by being physically present, but this is good. So in a remote environment, what tips do you have?
Okay, I would say first, be intentional and purposeful. You want to set up a program for peer mentoring for your employees so that they can have a buddy system of somebody to talk to, especially with new hires, that they can go to and have that and set up an informal pathway for that so that you've got a sponsor. The second is with traditional mentoring programs, you want a non-direct line of management team member that's approachable and available to that individual. And if they're geographically located, set up once a month lunches and occasional phone calls where it's a check-in. It's, hey, how you doing? But but set it up to where it's sponsored from the top down, that you've got the managers that are investing in this, because it is all about talent retention and mentoring for that.
Yeah.
And it's a buddy system and a manager system. So you set up a schedule and you sponsor it from the top down.
And it's interesting. So your recommendation is this concept of someone who's not in their direct chain of command, but is senior to them, who would be paired with that person for mentoring. They're doing it remotely, so scheduling regular, some type of regular cadence,
right,
and maybe structure around the questions that they are asked when you have those conversations, so that there's a guideline, because not everybody is a born mentor and people sometimes don't know how to do it. So the guidelines, and that is something that we can help with also.
Right, and it's a module in some of our training programs as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's funny because, as I mentioned, I was in the Navy, and that's the old running mate concept, where you have somebody who's not in your chain of command, but is a fellowship mate, and they're sometimes you just have questions about, what time should I get in line at the galley? I mean, just simple stuff. And at work, it would be, help me with getting my IT problem solved, and what number do I call? So, and obviously it's more
engagement and feeling valued. You feel valued when someone is checking in on you and helping you out, and doing it without anything other than, hey, I'm here to be part of the team.
So we're right at the top of the hour, and we want to stay on time. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. We hope that you found this beneficial. And as this has spurred questions, please reach out to us or the Cresa advisor who invited you. Again, I'm Jason Jones, Managing Principal, Steve Ike, Senior Vice President, and we do this every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. So if there are others that, from your organization or other organizations that you think might benefit, please let them know about it and forward our contact information. We'll help them with a registration link. So thank you very much.
Thanks all.